committee. I am subbing for Susanna Pressel and would like to nominate Councillor Lizzie Diggins to be chair. Is all of those in favour of that?
Right. Do we need a seconder? Somebody to be a chair?
You should second it, but I think
I'll second you to be chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Great, in which case that's carried, so I will pass over to Lizzie.
Thank you, Anna. I think we also now need to elect a vice chair, or is that what it's? Yeah, a vice chair. So can I take any nominations for vice chair, please?
should I read it?
Yeah, we could nominate Councillor Waite to be
don't
vice
mind.
chair. Vanessa,
Yep.
can anyone second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favour? Excellent. Okay, right, now we get on
Sweet.
fab. So, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Susan. Councillor Russell?
Councillor Pressel, for which Councillor Railton is substituting, and do we have apologies from anyone else?
No, we have another councillor during one.
Oh, I see. Fab. Okay, and Councillor Jafari Marbini is with us online. Okay, so does anyone have any declarations of interest? No?
No.
So our first report is the Code of Conduct Summary of Complaints and Individual Dispensations from the 1st of July until the 1st of October 2024. And the recommendation is that we note the contents of the report. But first of all, we'll take any questions or comments on that item. Yes, Councillor Harley.
I've just got a couple of questions. One is section 4. Have the complaints been made by 12?
Councillor, can you turn your microphone on?
It's the little button which has.
Thank you. In section 4, it says there have been 12 complaints concerning 9 councillors. Have the 12 complaints been made by 12 different people? Or is it one person making lots of complaints? I just wondered who was complaining. Is it 12 different people?
So each complaint is a complaint by a separate individual against a councillor. It can be, as we sometimes have, that 2 people may make us a complaint about the same incident, in which case, whilst I would deal with them as one process, they would still remain 2 individual complaints.
Thank you.
Did you have a further question?
I did. Could you just clarify in references 4, 5 and 6, there's a comment about impartiality of officers of the council. Does this mean that the complaint is that the person had questioned the impartiality? I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
So it refers to the Code of Conduct in terms of the heading there. It, as to what it means, will depend upon what the detail of each individual complaint is, and I can't go into that detail, but essentially what that table is quoting is the heading within the Code of Conduct with regards to what's not acceptable conduct on the part of members, which is generally around councillors not impeding or otherwise challenging the impartiality of councillors. Does that make sense?
I had a question as well, which you may or may, because I appreciate some of these, we can't know the details for good reason. But there was a point 8 about kind of complaints about the social media platform X. It slightly reads to me that it was outside the scope because it was on X, but that's not the case, is it? Councillor conduct if they are acting as a councillor on.
Absolutely. So a councillor can indeed be in breach of the Code of Conduct for something that they post on X, but what we need to be convinced of, what needs to be demonstrated, is that in making the post, they were acting as a councillor at that point. And if an account is not explicitly used for political purposes and the tweet itself wasn't one that you might think was political, would a reasonable person consider that that person was acting as a councillor when they posted that post? So that's the general way we look at it. So something can be posted on X and it can be under the code of conduct, but in some circumstances it won't be.
Thanks very much. Were there any other concerns or questions or comments? Councillor Smoten.
One very brief question. There's one complaint where there was a recommendation to actually take some action. I believe it was just a letter of apology and attend some training. Did that happen?
Yes, it has. I can confirm that both requests of that councillor were complied with and in a timely manner.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Jafari Marbini.
I guess it's just a qualification from Emma, if I may please, about X and social media, because I know from other working, for example, in the hospital and in other NHS institutions that that whether or not you put tweeting in a personal capacity, it is, I mean, your role is known, but you're not obviously speaking on behalf of the institution for which you work. And I assume the same rules apply. You know, when you Google any of our names, you can find out that we're all councillors. So whether or not you say tweeting in a personal capacity, it is assumed that it is your personal views rather than the views of the council that you're expressing.
It is your personal views, yes, and not assume it's views of the council. However, for councillors, in terms of when they're caught by the code and not caught by the code, it stems back to a piece of case law that considered the point. A lot of it comes down to what would the person perceive? Would the person perceive that at that point in time they are acting as a councillor or in a political manner? So, for example, a councillor could share something that someone might consider to be wholly inappropriate because it might be rude, for example. It doesn't necessarily mean that it would fall under the code of conduct. However, if they shared something rude about a community matter that they were ward councillor for that area and they've been campaigning about it, then that would be entirely different and they may come under the code of conduct. So it's very much down to what's the context, what's being said, and what context are they saying it, and how would it appear to the reasonable person looking at the post?
Okay, so do you mean that? If I may, Chair, do you mean that if essentially you're tweeting about a matter with which you have direct contact and/or responsibility for as a councillor in your ward, that it can be seen that it is to do with your duties as a councillor? Would that be correct? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are looking to tweet or engage in social media with something which is a cause that you were championing or very vocal on as a ward councillor or as a member of the political group with your councillor hat on, then it's more likely that you'll be caught. To give a non-social media example, but it kind of explains it a little bit simpler, assume that you're leaving the town hall and you are in the reception area and you start shouting and swearing at a fellow councillor. Most people are going to assume that you are doing that in your capacity as councillor. However, if you've left the building, gone over the road to the pub, you've taken your coat off, you're having a drink, and you do the same thing, it's very unlikely that I'm going to look at that as you acting as a councillor. So it's very much about the context. Though you could have said the same things, you've got to kind of look at the context of it and whether somebody believes you were acting as a councillor at that point.
Thank you, that's very clear.
Thank you very much for answering all of our questions. Are there any more questions or comments? Not seeing any, so I suggest we move to a vote to note the contents of the report. So all those happy to note the content of the report? Fantastic, thank you very much. So now we move on to the item 4, I believe, which is the appointment of independent persons, which is telling us about the progress of the appointment of independent persons in 2024, which we need to note, but we also need to, suggest we agree to appoint one opposition member of the Standards Committee to serve on the interview panel as required at paragraph 5.2 of the report. So first of all, any questions on this report? any comments on this report? Not seeing any. I'm just going to double check. I'm going to go down to wherever the paragraph is. Give me 1 second to just work out exactly what we need to do. Oh, yes, I'm confused, I guess. I didn't know if anyone can. Are we meant to decide who that person is now, or just agree?
Oh.
Yes, please, if possible, or if you can agree that perhaps delegate it to the chair to put forward. What we do need is it will be yourself as chair, and then we need a member of the opposition group, i.e. not from the Labour Party. So with those two, then we can convene an interview panel.
Would anyone like to volunteer themselves to be on the interview panel?
Can I ask about what the time commitment, please?
It depends how many applications we get. At the moment, we have a number of independent persons. Any interview would not be anything more than an hour, and that's allowing quite a generous amount of interview time. So it very much depends how many we decide to interview, how many applications we get. I can't. It could be that it's just the people who are existing, in which case there's only a small number. The ones that are there, it could be just 3 or 4, but yeah, I can't really say more than it'd be sort of an hour per interview max. We'd do them online, very likely. I don't think we would do it in person because an independent person doesn't need to be in Oxford, so we would be open to people further away. So we'd look to do it online as well.
So I've got one hand up from Councillor Smoten. Is there any other? And one from Councillor Jafari Marbini.
In that case, I'll withdraw.
Okay, fantastic. Then I guess if everyone is happy with that, with a brief show of hands, fantastic. I think we've decided on that. And then we just need to agree to note the report. Everyone happy with that? Thank you. Fantastic. Brilliant. At which point we move on to item, can I count 5? 5, member training update. So again, we need to note the report, but improve the continuation of the delivery programme for 2025. So were there any questions on this report, first of all? Not seeing any questions. Were there any comments? Yeah, Councillor Smoten, go ahead.
I'll take the opportunity on the topic of member training. Do we know, have we got a new session for Code of Conduct? And I'd also like to personally apologise for making myself a pain in that respect, in that I originally intended to come to one which I think was derailed by the general election, was then unable to make one in September, and then there was one where I believe the monitoring officer was unable to make it because they were ill. It begins to look as if we are fated never to learn about the Code of Conduct.
Don't worry, I'll make sure you do. No, we don't have a date yet, but I will get one sorted as soon as possible. It's very likely that it will probably be the other side of the new year as it stands. I think we've got a relatively full calendar of meetings, certainly into the start of December. But I will get that looked at, and we will circulate some dates and try and get one that can best be is best suitable for members. What I would like to just briefly pull out of the report, if that's okay through you, Chair, is just on the training with regards to ICT and health and safety, because I know a number of members have raised concerns about this. What I just want to flag is that the training that has recently been shared with members and they've been asked to undertake is not training it falls within the standards in the sense that it's not about member development. What this is compliance training. So when we are looking at our health and safety compliance, when we're looking at our ICT security compliance, they're things that have been recommended either through an audit or our best practice, or if there's a legal requirement to ensure that members are trained, particularly within the health and safety sphere, because of the responsibilities you have as a councillor, therefore being someone in control of the council. That there were issues in terms of how that was communicated to members and the timing of the two, unfortunately, because two separate departments were rolling them out. So we will make sure that that doesn't happen, that they arrive in the same place in the future. But occasionally there will be training which, whilst seems irrelevant in some ways to members, we do need you to undertake. So I just sort of wanted to explain that to the committee.
Thank you. That was going to be my next sort of question, was about the sort of the communication around that. I guess I had one other kind of comment or point to make, and this is a slightly selfish one, but I think a lot of us here work in the daytime, and I always note that there's 2 daytime times and 1 evening time. And if I can't make the evening time for whatever reason, maybe I've got, a work commitment in the evening sometimes, something else going on, either I have to try and cancel all of that stuff to come along to the training, or worry that I'm not going to be able to be compliant. And I think if we could kind of make it clear that there'll be some kind of allowance for the evening times, because otherwise I appreciate you giving us the choice, but for me, because of my work commitments, it's not really a choice. I have to go to the evening one. So that was just a bit of kind of, I guess, from a personal perspective, a bit of feedback, but I might be one of the only people that applies to, so. But that
I
was
don't
just my
think you
reflection.
are, and I think what actually we probably need to do at some point in the near future is do a sense check with members of those that would prefer them in the day and would prefer them in the evening, so we've got an understanding of that when we're looking to plan training, because I think obviously we've had a number of new members come in following the last election as well, so I'll make sure that that's undertaken and we kind of gauge that availability, so we've got a better idea when planning training in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's also reflected a bit in the sort of, because there's the readout in the report of the different numbers that attended each session, and the number of members that attend the evening session massively outweighs any of the daytime sessions. So just something to reflect on and think about. Were there any other comments from anyone else on the committee? So I realise I haven't been asking anyone to kind of introduce the report. So I'm sorry, Emma, if you've got things prepared and then I haven't asked you.
No,
So
that's
no,
fine.
okay. And then I think if we're happy to, what are we doing with, note that one and then approve, the next step. So everyone happy to note the contents of the report and approve the continuation of the delivery programme for 2025? Excellent. Then what we've got to do is agree the minutes of the previous meeting, which was in 2023. Is anyone? Oh, you were there. So you are the only person who can comment on the accuracy of the
In
minutes.
2023?
Yes.
I mean, I certainly can't.
10th of July as well.
Yeah. So
I'll say that I don't have any complaints about the.
fantastic. In which case, are we all happy to give a show of hands to approve? Excellent. And then we have to note the dates of future meetings. We are not scheduled to meet again until 6 p.m. on the 11th of March 2025, the 7th of July 2025, and the 13th of November 2025. So it'll be a long break for the Standards Committee. But yes, and with that, I think I need to. Oh yeah, this one. Sorry, guys, this was a lot longer than the last one. Yes, I will close the meeting, I think.
Oh,
Fantastic.